In the restless city of Lagos, wealth and poverty live side by side like strangers who shared the same road but never spoke. On one side of the city were the glittering streets of Victoria Island, where glass towers reflected the ocean and the richest families lived behind tall gates and armed security. On the other side were crowded neighborhoods like Ajigona, where life was a daily struggle and hope often had to fight for survival. Few people ever crossed between these two worlds. But one story would change that. Chief Adeyemi was one of the richest businessmen in Nigeria. His companies dominated shipping, oil contracts, and luxury real estate across Lagos. His mansion in Victoria Island was famous for its size and luxury. His only son, Connor Adeyemi, had grown up surrounded by privilege. Connor had studied abroad, driven the most expensive cars, and attended the best parties in Lagos. Many powerful families dreamed of connecting themselves to the Adeyemi name through marriage. Yet despite all the luxury around him, Connor often felt empty. Most people treated him like an opportunity rather than a person. His father had already planned his future. Connor was expected to marry the daughter of another wealthy businessman, Sandra, a proud and ambitious woman who believed the world belonged to people like her. Across the lagoon, in the busy streets of Ajigona, lived a young woman named Amora. Life had never been easy for her. Her father, a humble school teacher, had died when she was still young, leaving her mother and 3 younger siblings to survive on their own. Amora became the pillar of her family. She worked wherever she could, taking small jobs that barely paid enough for food. Eventually she found work as a maid in the Adeyemi mansion. Every morning before sunrise she boarded a crowded bus and traveled across Lagos to Victoria Island. There she cleaned floors, washed dishes, and ironed clothes worth more than her entire yearly income. Yet Amora carried herself with dignity. She worked quietly, spoke respectfully, and never allowed hardship to steal her kindness. One evening Connor returned home early after a long and frustrating meeting. The mansion was unusually quiet. As he walked toward the kitchen to get water, he heard a soft voice singing. He followed the sound. Amora stood by the sink washing dishes, humming a gentle gospel song as she walked. Her voice filled the room with calm. Connor stood there for a moment before she noticed him. She quickly stopped and stepped aside. "Good evening, sir." Connor nodded. "What's your name?" "Amora, sir." Something about the way she spoke caught his attention. She wasn't nervous like the other staff, and she didn't flatter him either. She simply spoke honestly. From that moment on, Connor began noticing her more often. Sometimes he entered the kitchen while she worked. Other times he sat quietly in the garden while she watered flowers nearby. At first their conversations were simple. But slowly they began talking about life. Amora told him about Ajigona. She spoke about children studying by candlelight, mothers waking before dawn to sell food in crowded markets, and families who survived through unity and determination. Connor listened carefully. It surprised him that such struggles existed only a short distance from the luxurious streets where he lived. Meanwhile Sandra began noticing Connor's growing interest in the maid. Her pride turned to jealousy. One afternoon she confronted Amora in the hallway. "You should remember who you are," Sandra said coldly. "You are just a maid." Amora said nothing. But Connor overheard the conversation. "Respect is not something money can buy," he told Sandra firmly. Sandra's humiliation turned into quiet hatred. Soon rumors began spreading throughout the mansion. Some servants whispered that the maid was trying to trap the billionaire's son. Eventually the gossip reached Chief Adeyemi. Furious, he summoned Amora to his office. "You will stop speaking with my son immediately," he said coldly. Amora lowered her eyes and agreed. That night she cried quietly in her room. The next morning she resigned and returned to Ajigona without saying goodbye. When Connor discovered she was gone, he felt something break inside him. He confronted his father for the first time in his life. "You can control my business decisions," Connor said, "but you cannot control my heart." His father remained unmoved. "You will forget that girl." But Connor knew he couldn't. Days later he drove to Ajigona himself. There he saw the Lagos Amora had described. Flooded streets, small crowded houses, children running barefoot. Yet he also saw neighbors sharing food and helping each other rebuild broken homes. Eventually he found Amora helping children in a small community learning center. When she saw him, she was shocked. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Connor smiled. This is exactly where I should be. Heavy rains soon struck Lagos, flooding entire neighborhoods in Ajigona. Homes collapsed and families were stranded. Connor refused to watch from a distance. He organized rescue teams, sent food and medicine, and walked beside volunteers in the muddy streets. News cameras captured everything. Across Lagos, people watched the billionaire's son carrying children through floodwater and helping rebuild damaged homes. Chief Adeyemi saw the news and watched silently. He saw something he had never truly seen before. His son had become a leader. And the woman standing beside him had helped him understand the people he would one day lead. Weeks later, the old man called Connor home. If she truly makes you stronger, he said quietly, bring her back. Months later, the Adeyemi mansion hosted one of the biggest weddings Lagos had ever seen. Connor Adeyemi married Amora, the girl from Ajigona. But the story did not end there. 2 years passed. Connor and Amora used their wealth to build schools, hospitals, and scholarship programs across Lagos. They spent time not only in their mansion in Victoria Island but also in communities like Ajigona. People began calling Amora the queen of the streets. But far away, Sandra had never forgotten her humiliation. She returned to Nigeria quietly, filled with resentment. Through secret deals and powerful investors, she began attacking the Adeyemi business empire. Contracts were cancelled, investors withdrew, and banks began pressuring the company. Chief Adeyemi realized someone was deliberately trying to destroy them. Then Sandra made her most dangerous move. One evening, Amora left a community meeting in Ajigona. As she walked toward her car, a van stopped beside her. Masked men forced her inside and disappeared into the night. Connor received a phone call shortly afterward. If you want your wife alive, a cold voice said, withdraw from every business deal. Connor felt his world collapse. Investigators soon discovered the truth. Sandra was behind everything. While the search continued, Amora remained calm despite being held in an abandoned warehouse. She had faced hardship her entire life and refused to surrender to fear. When one guard became careless, she managed to free her hands and ran. At the same moment, Connor and the rescue team stormed the building. Chaos erupted. Then Connor saw her running toward him through the darkness. Amora. She collapsed into his arms, exhausted but safe. Sandra was arrested soon after. As police took her away, she glared at Amora. You stole everything from me. Amora replied quietly, love is not something you steal. It is something you earn. The scandal shocked the nation. But instead of weakening the Adeyemi family, it strengthened them. Connor and Amora expanded their foundation even further, launching projects to build schools, create jobs, and improve housing across Lagos. Years later, a large crowd gathered in Ajigona for the opening of a university funded by the Adeyemi Foundation. When Connor stood to speak, the crowd began cheering. But they were not shouting his name. They were shouting Amora's. Connor smiled and leaned toward her. You were never just a maid. Amora smiled back. And you were never just a billionaire. The girl who once cleaned floors in a mansion had become a symbol of hope for thousands. And together they proved that love, courage, and compassion could bridge even the deepest divides between the rich and the forgotten.